Greetings, everyone. I am Queen Diambi Kabatuswila Chiyeyomwata, Mukalenga Mukajiwa Nkashama, Wabakwaluntu, Wakasai, Wakongo. That is the traditional queen of the Order of the Leopard of the Bakwalunte people in Kasai, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I am also Grande Mai, the Povo Bantu Brasileiro. That is a traditional queen representing the African diaspora or the African descendants of Brazil. I am very pleased and honored to be here today to address you in this organization, the International Lawyers Association, talking about human rights. It's very important to me as a traditional queen to maybe remind people that although today Africa seems to be the terrain of a lot of human rights violations, it is not. It doesn't mean that Africa has always been this way, and also it doesn't mean that Africa is a lawless land. We've always been regimented by a very well-crafted and very well-tailored laws and ways of governance that made sure that the human rights were guaranteed in any community, such as, for instance, my kingdom or many other kingdoms. Of course, those laws maybe didn't resemble all the laws that we have today in terms of what the protection of human rights. However, we have to remember that the first human rights charter was actually an African one. In 1222, in the Mali Empire, the Mande Charter was written, and that charter actually seemed to have been the foundation for the existence later on of the Charte des droits de l'homme. And oftentimes when we speak about human rights, we think about France. But I'm proud to say that in Africa, way before, a couple of centuries before, we already had a Charter of Human Rights. So therefore, this is also kind of an example to show that in African cultures, human rights are fundamental, and human rights are in the core of governance in all these systems that we've had before colonialism. And that today the situation calls for a lot of attention. And unfortunately, the traditional kingdoms and the traditional heritage of law are not very much solicited to advise and to inform in terms of human rights on the continent. Of course, there is a lot of different violations we can speak about, but in the Congo precisely, we know that the situation in the east of the Congo is very disturbing, and it's been going on for now over 2 decades. And there is a lot of crimes committed against the people that are there. There is also a lot of issues concerning the rights of speech. Also different organizations have already spoken on that. Also the right for political expression or political dissension, and maybe other human rights, especially in terms of children and labor for children and the protection of rights of children. So it's important that I speak on the fact that in our traditions, we've had a long lasting culture of making sure that human beings are protected, because human beings represent the divine on earth manifested in humanity. However, it's also the rights of animals and the rights of the environment, because everything is imbued with the divine spirit. So in our tradition, it was absolutely essential to make sure that we gave gratitude and grace, and we treated everyone with fairness and equity. However, of course, with the reign of the colonial powers that came, that a lot of African people were stripped, actually all the African people were stripped from their human rights, or from even the right to belong to the human family, because for a couple of centuries, African people were, captured, deported, and sold as, cattle almost, or as even just goods and objects. So we have come a long way today from that time, and the governance system today are based on the system that we have inherited from the colonial era, and those systems were not necessarily at the time designed to protect human rights on the continent. However, today it's another day, and we have to really make sure that we are verbal and we voice any human rights violation, and we make sure that we engage with the secular leaders that are there, but also with the leaders of communities, because oftentimes when those rights are not respected, they are not respected in levels of community first. So all these actions will take place in a community. So we are lucky that Africa is still very much community organized, and I think that it's important to make sure that people embrace, the human rights as an important core values for the development of a society. And therefore, I would love to see more engagements of, International Lawyers Association and all different associations speaking on human rights to get involved and get informed of what's going on in the countries and territories. Oftentimes in the Congo, we have some major issues in the east of the Congo related to the conflict that has been going on for quite some time now, over 2 decades. That is really a mineral conflict. It's not really only tribes, it's more than that. It's actually gangs, just trying to control different territories. And for that, they have, a rule of and reign of terror to make sure that they can frighten the populations and have them exit the areas that are very prolific in terms of, mining resources, and so they can exploit those resources. So many violations, of course, are committed there, and unfortunately, we don't always have the means to help the judiciary process. Because we don't have the means to allocate to pursue, some of these criminals, and to continue to provide also for the victims some help. So that's one of the major issues I will talk about in the Congo, but I will also speak on the rights for children. For instance, because of poverty, many children have to find themselves either working under very difficult conditions, and other children find themselves in the streets of mainly the capitals or big cities in Africa. And in Kinshasa, we probably have about 20 to 40,000 children on the streets. And these homeless children, of course, are almost fallen out of the category of humanity because nobody really cares for their rights. And I am involved with 7 orphanages that do take care of these children. And any of you would like to know more, of course, I would love to give you information about that. So there are multiple domains in which human rights are violated, including maybe in the terms of political expression or access to the ability to speak on their own, like as an opposition. Although much improvement has been done in that domain in Congo, because today in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are still, there are a very open space for people to be dissident to the actual regime, and the press also has more freedom, and people do not get imprisoned because of political reasons. However, the situation is still not completely perfect. And just like anywhere else, there's still violations of human rights all over the world. And I do want to speak on the fact that it's important to recognize that Africa has always been regimented by very, well-balanced governance systems that provided for the protection of individuals and protection of the goods, and also protection of nature. So it's important that we remember that before judging the continent too harshly. But a lot of the violations are mainly due to the fact that there is poverty. And there is much to do in terms of engaging the continent in developing so that they can provide more opportunities for the people to be able to cater to their own needs in terms of material needs and other needs. So I would advise that education is used indeed to promote the idea that people's life is important, people's life is precious, as it was always in our culture, to promote and engage different leaders in communities, not just the political leaders, but also the civil and secular leaders in communities and also traditional leaders, because oftentimes, as I said, when human rights are violated, it's often happen in the midst of a community. So the more we go to the strata, the more how can I say, the more community, the base of a community, the more impact we can have on ensuring that human rights are respected. It is also important to educate people who are in the law sector in general. Could it be the police? Could it be the lawyers, judiciary system? Could it be the politics? It's important to get them involved into maybe more accessing easy information about what is human rights, how they can be enforced, what are the recourses for people who would come with complaints about human rights violation, where could they go, who would be the people taking care of them. So in that matter, I think that the International Lawyers Association could do a lot to help the communities find out how to make sure that they do have the proper information about what is human rights, what are the human rights, and how they can be enforced. And if they not enforced, what are the international or the non-governmental organization that can be there to assist in order for people to be vindicated in case they have been violated in their rights. So as a traditional leader, I believe that much more engagement needs to be done to include the traditional leadership, because it's really the base, the grassroots community leadership that needs to be reinforced, needs to be involved, needs to be respected, because it's also part of the culture, where maybe through different channels and maybe through different modalities, we can speak on the importance of having human rights respected. So I know I don't have much time to continue to elaborate on these matters, but I'm very glad that you gave me some time to speak about that. And I hope that another occasion I will be with you all in person. And I hope that the little things that I said could maybe spark some reflection about what's going on in maybe the DRC, which is oftentimes well known to most in the field of human rights. So I cannot, elaborate so much more in this little time, but I hope that whichever information I brought today would at least spark some interest in you wanting to know more, not only about what's going on in the Congo in terms of human rights, but also include the right to promote our culture and tradition and history as being part of the human rights, because we oftentimes have been deprived of the knowledge about our own history, deprived of the knowledge and the appreciation of our own cultural heritage, which could, if well preserved and well put to use, could inform our communities and our societies on how better to care for humanity in our lands. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful event, and may you be all fulfilled with good knowledge in order for you to continue to pursue your work and your engagement to be people of law. Thank you.